Chyna.
You're listening to episode 3 of the Legion of Gloom podcast, and today we're going to do something different. We're going to look back at the career of an icon, a dominating force in professional wrestling. We're going to look back at the career of the late Chyna. Chyna, of course, passed away on April 20th, 2016, and today we're going to go back and we're going to look at some of the most poignant moments of her career.
We're not going to scrub Chyna from history or pretend she didn't exist. The WWE might have put up their Chyna tribute playlist and taken it down quite quickly, but we want to give her a proper due. We want to look back at everything she accomplished in her WWE career, touch on maybe some of the negatives, but mostly have a positive look back at what Chyna accomplished and the bar she set for women going forward. Right, so this is our third episode, and we're going to go into something a bit controversial, a bit meaty, something we can talk plenty of wrestling and plenty of personal stuff. We're going to go into the life and times of Chyna, but focusing more on beginning with her debut in the WWF all the way through to her last match and maybe a wee bit beyond. Chyna, what do you think, Mickey?
I gotta say, Chyna, she was a pioneer for women, and especially in professional wrestling. Chyna was a trailblazer. There's no other words you can use. She shattered the glass ceiling. She broke down barriers across genders. And perhaps our conversation on Chyna's career might not do her career and her life justice. But I think, especially with the news of the women's evolution, the first ever women's pay-per-view and stuff, it's important to reflect back on Chyna's career. And Patrick, I was a massive fan of Chyna back in the 90s.
See, I was sort of indifferent on Chyna. She was sort of just there. I wasn't like a big fan, but I didn't hate her either. She was just one of those people that was on the roster. But looking back, as I have done for the research for this show, you sort of do appreciate the things she did. Like, as we'll sort of find out, that maybe she wasn't the best in the ring, but she got plenty of moments, and her in-ring career was really only 2 years when you look at it, but she got plenty of firsts, as we'll go on to, but plenty of big moments that we'll talk about here. And we'll not go maybe too in-depth as we would with like a show recap, but we'll try and touch on as much as possible and do her a wee bit of justice maybe.
Yeah, Chyna, she was coined the 9th wonder of the world. I think she is so important to wrestling. And doing my research, it was nice to go back and revisit some of Chyna's career, especially over the last few years. We're inundated with these trashy videos and trashy journalism, and people poking Chyna with a stick, and you've seen these videos of her being drunk online and stuff. And I hope this video celebrates her life and her career in a bit more of a positive way than what we've seen online over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and don't be thinking that it's going to be all serious just because of how everything ended. Like, there's plenty in her career we can have a wee laugh about and maybe enjoy too. So will we get stuck right on?
Let's get stuck on, Patrick.
So let's start at the beginning, basically, where we don't even know who Chyna is. Triple H is in the middle of a feud with Goldust, and he's made sort of a, as they always call it, an indecent proposal towards Marlena.
Yeah, that's right.
And she's turned Triple H down, so him and Goldust are in the middle of it. In your house, Triple H is in a match with The Rock for the Intercontinental title. Mm-hmm. Goldust comes out and starts rubbing his big gold titties in front of Triple H to distract them. And that lets Rock get the one. So Marlena's there at ringside with Goldust, and this beefy, scary looking woman grabs her by the throat and pulls her out of the ringside area.
I remember JR. Is that a man? Is that a woman? It was the first thing that they brought on in the conversation the very moment Chyna appeared on screen.
They play it off as if she's an actual crowd member, not a plant.
Yeah.
And they're like, who is that? Is that a woman? Like, they don't even know. They can't even tell. I mean, anybody with a set of eyes can tell. It's not that bad, like. But it's funny because they even show a replay, which they obviously wouldn't do if it was a real fan.
Oh yeah.
But you see the people at ringside and they're looking at it like they don't know what to make of it, but nobody steps on still. She's that scary.
And I think it is kind of a new thing in this era as well, like crowd run-ins and stuff. Like, it's not something you would have seen that often, really, was it?
Well, this was kind of around the time they started blending real life with storylines, and you sort of didn't know what to believe. I think the plant in the crowd has always been a thing, but in wrestling, and this was like when you see someone come out and they're built like a bodybuilder, like they're not built like a fan. Obviously, it's part of the show, so don't panic too much.
Yeah, but JR's words, and it's funny it's coming from JR. You know, is it a man? Is it a woman? That's something that would sort of blight Chyna for years to come. You know, we did see her image change a lot over the years.
Yeah, and one of the things I looked at when I was sort of researching into Chyna was an interview she did with Howard Stern years later. And one of the things she touched on was like how she didn't feel comfortable in her own skin kind of thing. And he really sort of, you know, he was famous for being like a shock jock and bringing up all the awkward questions. And he asked her like, you see here, she looks very different. And he asked her about getting her jaw redone.
Yeah.
And he's like, is that because you didn't like how you looked? And she's sort of shy and like, oh no, it's just, you know, because of the way that was a dental problem.
Yeah.
But she obviously looks very different here than she would in later years. So the next night on Raw, they play it off, obviously, as we said, like she just jumped in from the crowd. So the next night on Raw, Goldust comes out and he sort of makes it like, this is all personal now with Triple H or Hunter Hearst Helmsley at the time, as we should say, or Helmsley, as Pat Patterson calls him. So Marlena gets involved too, and she starts chucking the insults out of Triple H, and he throws water at Goldust, and Chyna appears again in the ring behind Terry, Marlena, whatever you want to call her, and starts shaking her like she owes her money, just from side to side, like a ragdoll, obviously, is the comparison JR makes.
Shake her like a rag doll. I'll never forget that.
She shakes her proper violently, like she almost shakes her clothes off, as the fans at the time are probably eager for.
She's like a big dog killing a cat.
That's exactly what it's like, shaking the life out of her. So they give her the nickname Chyna pretty soon after this, and it's sort of like a play on like she's actually not delicate like Chyna, she's a monster.
Yeah.
But this ball builds up to a big match at WrestleMania 13 with Triple H and Goldust, and they continue playing up the whole is she a man thing, which I just find mad watching now. There's a sign in the crowd that's clearly shown on camera, I sent you the other day, and it says, when Hunter and Chyna get silly, who got the willy?
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
It's mad. And I don't know, like Jerry Lawler even goes as far as to call her like ugly.
Yeah.
And he says like, she's so ugly, her father must have breastfed her and not her man. You're like, imagine him saying that about one of the divas now. Or not divas, ladies.
You can't call them divas anymore, Patrick.
But they call her like an Amazon over and over too, which is like obviously the term they want to use. They really want to get the Amazon over.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, she gets involved in the finish. She stalks Marlena around ringside, and when Goldust tries to save her, Triple H knocks her off the apron, and he manages to get the pedigree on Goldust, and that sort of wraps up their kind of mini feud. But so over the next couple of months, she would sort of appear as Triple H's backup mainly, and she's sort of mostly there as a manager. She would slide in the ring whenever she was needed to give somebody a low blow or just look intimidating. Yeah,
and it's important to mention this was the blue blood Triple H, wasn't it? This was Triple H with the opera music and the big coat and he's very flamboyant. And I think Chyna did wonders for Triple H's career, Hunter Hearst Helmsley's career. I think Chyna was really instrumental in getting Triple H over to that next level. And I think fair play to him too for not being afraid to have a woman as his manager, because there are probably a lot of guys there who are like, I'm not letting a woman fight the battles or help me win, you know, in the way that she did. She wasn't like a normal woman manager where she was like flaunting her butts to distract the opponents. She was beating on them and helping Triple H win with her strength and her power, and also fair play to him for letting it happen, and fair play to her for being able to keep up. Well, Chyna broke the mold. She, to the best of my knowledge, she was the first female enforcer in the WWE. She wasn't a valet. She wasn't a manager. She was enforcer. She was Triple H's bodyguard. She was, and I think one of the most famous moments of this that I remember back then anyway is like she's with him as he wins the King of the Ring, obviously, and he beats Mick Foley in the final. But he goes on to SummerSlam against Mankind. Yeah. And I really remember how hard she rattled the cage off his head. Like, I think she single-handedly knocked a few cells loose. She really had the moniker of like a female killer at this time. And this is just before the brink of D-Generation X, of which she became the backbone for that faction. She did, and she stuck by Triple H all the way as they started teaming with Shawn Michaels, and they formed DX with Rick Rude as well, obviously. And like,
she'd be there as their enforcer, but she actually became part of the sort of the comedy shtick as well that they would do.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't be afraid to sort of mention her titties and make a joke of it.
Yeah, I remember some great promos of like when she got like she must have got like breast implants, and Shawn Michaels, like classic Shawn Michaels, is just kind of creeping on her throughout his promo. It's just great stuff. It really was cutting edge. But as we were saying about China, for me, and of course I was a lot younger back then, China never felt, okay, Shawn Michaels was the main eventer, Triple H was the mid-carder, but China never felt lower than them to me in the group. She didn't feel like she was a third or fourth ranked member.
No, and it was weird because it was a while before she actually got in the ring.
Yeah, or even spoke. I don't think she spoke.
No, she rarely did. Like, I think even in those DX promos where they're like backstage and they're messing about with signs and stuff, and like she's just sort of sitting there with her grumpy bacon that was sort of what they obviously wanted her to do. Her job was to stand there, look menacing, and when the time came, slide in, low blow somebody.
Yeah.
She mostly did it grand. Like, there's a couple of occasions I remember King of the Ring, it was featured on a Reaching Botchamania there, that she left Jim Cornette standing like a dickhead when she was supposed to slide in and low blow him, and he had to stood for ages while she remembered her cue.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like, you look back at Chyna as a really effective part of DX, and even when they expanded and it was Triple H, Road Dogg, Billy Gunn and X-Pac, she came into her own even more, I think, when the group grew.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So before we move ahead, let's talk about the low blow for a minute, because that became Chyna's signature. And to best of my knowledge, I guess she was supposed to be a heel, but the low blow always got a huge pop from the crowd, didn't it?
I think people just enjoy someone getting punched in the belly. I think it's just always funny.
True.
It is probably one of the most despicable things a heel can do, but when you've got somebody on there as well that can sell it funny, just do it.
Yeah. And she had some classics.
Yeah, and I wanted to sort of touch on especially Chyna's in-ring debut. Did you get a chance to look back at it?
Chyna's in-ring debut, was this with X-Pac against Mark Henry?
Well, there was one earlier than this where it was like an 8-man tag team match, and the whole thing was, it was literally just after the new DX had formed, and so it was all of DX came down to the ring, and you were sort of led to believe that it was going to be X-Pac's first match back, and it was like it's going to be all of DX as a unit for the first time. And the referee starts trying to throw Chyna out, and X-Pac steps in and he's like, nope, it's me, it's going, she's going to be wrestling. So this is her first official match in the ring in the WWF, and it's DX against 8-Ball, Skull, and the Legion of Doom, who keep coming up every time we do a show somehow.
Can't avoid these lads.
Exactly, but what I loved about this was that the New Age Outlaws came out on scooters, if you remember, taking the hand out of the DOA, which was pretty funny. Like, but this is the first, JR says anyway, that it's the first ever intergender match in WWE history also. So like, it's shocking how many firsts come up here when we're talking about Chyna, but in this one she's booked really strongly as well. Like, she's even in there, she's fighting the Legion of Doom, who are too notoriously kind of won't sell for anybody, but they had no problem on here with Chyna. It's brief, and she goes on in her Hurricane Rana and stuff, and it doesn't look great, but it's a big moment, I think. Do you notice? But you'll see as we go on that even though she does step in the ring, they kind of keep it brief for quite a while until they're more comfortable with her in there.
Yeah. So Patrick, I remember, maybe not so much at the time, but I remember hearing in U-shoots and stuff like that a lot of the guys were very reluctant to get in the ring, especially to be in the ring and get pinned by Chyna. So I guess in this the debut match against men, Just wonder what those guys would have thought and felt, and were they cool with it?
I would love to have a list. I would love to know who had the problems and who didn't, because when you look back now, they're probably thinking, you know what, I probably should have just let Chyna because she turned out to be a big deal. You might have thought it was like a flash in the pan type thing or a passing idea, but you want to be on the right side of history. But like, in saying that, as much as like she was like the backbone of DX and like she was always as an enforcer, I thought it was interesting to note as well that when the Nation of Domination came along and it was faction versus faction, it was the first time that you sort of saw someone use Chyna as a weakness against Triple H. I'm thinking specifically about the build up to SummerSlam '98, where they sort of used her as a chip against DX. They managed to get DX locked in the locker room, brought Chyna down to the ring, and The Rock was doing his flirting. The whole nation come out and basically hold her hostage.
Yeah.
And he makes her get down on her knees and everything, and it's pretty uncomfortable when you really think about it.
You know, Patrick, I rewatched this as well, and you know, it was very Clockwork Orange. It's very, dare I say, rapey. You know, it wasn't cutting edge. It was really hard to watch. And I gotta say, like, I've recently moved home and I haven't got internet at the minute, so I've done my research for this episode in a public library, and I gotta say, watching, you know, men versus women wrestling in a public library, you know, I felt uncomfortable watching a lot of this stuff.
You have to hope that someone behind you was like recognised it as a wrestling scene and not anything else.
Someone phoned the cops.
But like the sickest thing about it is that it's like, you know, he puts her down on her knees and he starts like telling her she looks good and all, and he goes to kiss her, but then he tells her he would never kiss a piece of trash like that. And so it's all about sort of fuck you anyway.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of like the birth of sexual chocolate to Mark Henry, because at the end of the promo he's kind of like, Mark Henry, you kiss that ass, or whatever, and Mark Henry does this big dirty, he like, he does like this tongue thing, and it's absolutely disgusting, you know. And then the moment I seen it, it just took me back 20 years, back into my childhood, and I always thought, oh, that looks so creepy. But this is probably the beginning of their, you know, the sexual chocolate stuff.
This was because, as you say, like they start sort of pairing Mark Henry and Chyna together, and even in the SummerSlam match where Chyna gets her revenge, it's Mark Henry that tries to get involved on the Rock side. Yeah,
that's right. It's Mark Henry and Chyna are both at ringside for the entirety of the match.
And like I think he tries to throw powder at Triple H, and Chyna ends up having to get involved, and she helps Triple H by giving The Rock a low blow and knocking him off the ladder. So it's like Chyna and Mark Henry, the seeds are planted here, and this is what, August 1998.
Yeah.
And their wee thing kind of runs right up until January 99. So that's a good few months of them going back and forth and having wee flirty moments and, you know, creepy moments and weird moments and getting in the ring.
But, you know, people romanticize about the Attitude Era a lot, Patrick, and, you know, I think I fall victim to this myself. But when you look back, like, look at all these nice little slow burner storylines that have payoff in the end, and I think that's something that the product is really missing at the moment.
No, definitely, you're right, but I think it's worth noticing too that like our next in-ring match is with Mark Henry.
Okay.
It's a handicap match with her and X-Pac against Mark Henry, and this is a match where watching, I don't remember this happening at all, and I don't know if I can even put up as a video because I'm afraid of the fallout. But as Mark Henry's walking to the ring, Triple H is doing like monkey motions.
Yeah, I watched this too.
And like, you know, not even like, you can't even say, oh, it's not a, it's full on doing Mark Henry as a gorilla all the way to the ring.
It just looks so racist.
And people talk about like the Nation party where, you know, they even did blackface and they write that off as, oh, it was a different time and blah blah blah. But this is kind of it was never okay to do this, like, was it?
No, pretty bad. And yeah, you wonder, I don't know, I guess times are different, but there's no excuse for it.
No, I mean, again, you can't really punish people in 2018 for standards from 20 years ago, but it was shocking to watch, especially for Triple H.
Yeah, and it's almost like they're trying to keep it off camera as well. Our listeners need to go find this. It was the handicap match on Raw in September 1998.
Yeah, 14th of September 1998. It's on the network. It hasn't been cut from the network, so someone approved it. Hulk Hogan's working the network, I think. But in this match, what notable about this match was did you see how like sick the power slam was that she took from the top rope? It's almost like she jumps off the top rope and he twists her in midair, like.
Yeah, you know, we haven't really gone into Chyna's history, and we haven't mentioned that she was trained at Killer Kowalski's wrestling school, the same school that graduated the likes of Triple H, Perry Saturn, A-Train, to mention but a few. And so, yes, she was a professionally trained wrestler by one of the greatest of all time, but Chyna was pretty much an active wrestler for maybe 2 years up to this stage. She didn't really take many bumps. You know, she got on, hit the odd low blow, maybe the odd chair shot. Scary bump, Patrick.
It was, but it was impressive to see someone take it too, especially in their second match, as we say. And of course, this led on and on to the really famous moment between Chyna and Mark Henry, which is the night they went out on their date.
I love this.
Especially, we both love D'Lo Brown, so he's involved here too. He's the limo driver, and they're playing the part of, Mark's being like or trying to be super charming anyway, and Chyna's playing the part of his unwilling date.
Yeah.
And as every romantic comedy goes, she eventually starts enjoying herself, and they have a laugh. And
how did this come about? So Mark Henry is sexual chocolate now. He's full blown sexual chocolate by this stage. The Nation of Domination have split up. They've all gone their separate ways, except for Mark Henry and D'Lo. They've stuck together. He just has a thing for Chyna, but I think he wins the right to take her on a date or something. She's very reluctant, but this is fantastic.
No, it's great, and they eventually they start warming to each other, obviously, and they get into a bar fight because someone insults Chyna's honor, and Sexy Chocolate has to step in and sort them out. But it leads to an even crazier moment, which is Attitude Era in a nutshell, I think, and this goes into January '99.
Yeah,
where it's built and they're sort of like not an item, but it's kind of still teased that they're dating them, whatever. And Chyna's friend Sammy comes to Raw, and Sammy, I don't even know how to explain it. You watch it now anyway, and you'll know what I'm getting at. But Sammy's obviously, you see where the segment's going before it even starts.
Yeah.
But Chyna leaves him alone in the back. A week passes, and Chyna's saying she's got this secret she's gonna tell about Mark Henry, and his ma is in the crowd.
Poor Mark Henry's mommy.
Oh, terrible. I don't know if it's his real ma. I have no idea, but I hope someone told her beforehand what was going to happen. But
this lady looks very shocked, I have to say, Patrick.
Maybe no one clued her on.
I don't think so. I mean, kayfabe was massive here at this stage, and I don't think she's clued up at all.
I suppose it's one way to get a genuine reaction, but I don't think there's any way you would have got a good reaction out of this. But so what happens is Mark Henry comes out and he's like begging her, don't do it, Chyna. And obviously JR and King's like, what is it? But first she makes him admit that they didn't do anything together, because he's been bragging that he hit Chyna, he hit her up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So he makes it, and he admits, he says, we didn't do the wild thing, we didn't do the mild thing, we didn't do no thing. And she's like, okay, thanks for that. Roll the tape anyway. So the tape is Sammy and Mark Henry in the locker room, and it's heavily implied that she sucks his sexy chocolate knob. Yeah,
he's loving it. He's loving it too.
And he's like, oh yeah, that feels good, baby. And it keeps cutting to his ma watching in the crowd. And this is ridiculous. But they get a bit more frisky, and Mark eventually, he tries to slip a hand, and
he does.
Do you remember, what does he say?
You got a penis.
Sweet Jesus, you got a penis.
Sammy. That's why they call me Sammy, baby.
Sammy, just because you could use that name both ways.
I know. She looks like Lily Savage.
That's exactly what I thought too.
Oh my gosh. Ooh.
How's that, baby?
Oh, that's good. Don't stop. Oh, sweet Jesus. You got a penis.
What's wrong, baby?
Penis.
They didn't tell me, honey. That's why they call me Sammy, baby.
So Mark Henry goes off and he bokes and everything, which in our current trans-positive world, you obviously couldn't have that reaction.
And who recorded this? The cameraman's in there the whole time. It wasn't even GTV.
Well, no, it didn't. They didn't even play it as a GTV. It was just a regular cameraman, and they knew they were up to no good. So why would they let the cameraman roll?
He just stayed there.
Oh, it's absolute madness. But the thing about it is that it was kind of the first time that Chyna got to show a bit of personality, and it was sort of a sneak peek of the Chyna that you would see with Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah.
you know, she got to smile finally and have a bit of a laugh, and even though it was completely over the top.
Yeah, it was, you know what, very refreshing. Even like that bar fight and the date and stuff, like we're just so accustomed to seeing Chyna as the strong, silent type, the enforcer, arms folded, closed person. So it was really refreshing at this time, and the audience, I think Chyna was really over anyway, but the audience really warmed up to Chyna even more.
They did. I think they loved this kind of car crash entertainment as well. Like at that time, that's what the people were there for. It's so often said about the Attitude Era crowds that they weren't there for the matches. They were there to see all the angles and storylines. And I mean, this doesn't get more Jerry Springer than this. Like, moving on from the sort of Mark Henry comedy bits, Chyna sort of really comes into her own in 1989. And when you look back, there's an absolute ridiculous list here of firsts that Chyna accomplished for a woman in the business. So
1999 was the year of Chyna.
it was. I'm going to go through a list of the things she accomplished, and I want you to sort of chat back and forth with me here about what you remember about these wee moments, and we'll sort of try and quickfire all the things she accomplished.
Because there's a lot. Let's do it.
So the first one is, do you remember the corporate Royal Rumble?
Oh, I love the corporate Royal Rumble.
So the big thing about this was it was the corporation against DX, with a winner going on to the Royal Rumble at number 30.
Yeah.
And they went back and forth, like all the corporation members and all the DX members went back and forth until it got to the end. And Vince McMahon comes out as a surprise.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh my God, Vince McMahon, now he's going to cheat and he's going to win it. He dumps Triple H and Big Boss Man over the top, I think it is.
Yeah.
And then DX's music hits again. And out comes Chyna. And Chyna throws Vince over the top, and he takes a nasty spill and snaps his neck.
Well, let's set the stage here. Austin interferes as well. Austin distracts Vince McMahon, isn't that right?
That's right, he does.
And Chyna, pardon my French, Chyna fucks Vince over the top rope so hard. Vince's neck. Vince does a full spin and his neck gets caught under the bottom rope and he almost gets beheaded.
His head bounces back off the rope, hits the apron, gets caught in between somehow, and he's lying on the ground, half selling it, half probably actually wondering is his neck broke, when Austin comes over to give him a bit of a mouth in the ear.
I think it's one of the best eliminations ever.
It has to be. And I don't know if he didn't practice it beforehand or he just didn't have that kind of, you know, a wrestler knows how to take that bump. And he slipped a hand somewhere and didn't know where to put it, and there he goes over the top, nearly smacks his neck in two.
It's Chyna! What? It's Chyna! Chyna's the last participant for DX! Wait a minute, she can't be in this! What do you mean? Mr. McMahon was in it! Chyna makes the throw! Chyna wins the corporate rumble! No! Chyna is number 30 in the corporate rumble!
I wonder if this was the plan all along, or if this was like a last minute decision, like they just threw Chyna into the mix. Because it seemed to come from kind of out of nowhere.
I think they just wanted another surprise. I think every week almost there was a surprise on Raw, and this was the surprise that week. But
Yeah.
I would say they did have a plan, because giving Chyna a spot in the Royal Rumble is a big deal. And this was how she won the right to be the first woman that ever competed in a Royal Rumble match, and at number 30 no less.
And who does she eliminate?
Sexy Chocolate.
Sexy Chocolate.
And who eliminates her? The man that helped her win.
Austin.
Stone Cold.
Stone
He's like,
Cold, Stone Cold.
fuck your first. I'm winning this thing.
But yeah, as you mentioned, what a massive achievement for Chyna, being the first woman to compete in the Royal Rumble. It's been imitated ever since. I think we've seen Beth Phoenix, we've seen Karma all enter the Royal Rumble, but Chyna was the first, and Chyna was the most believable. And, you know, I don't think she was ever going to win it, but you could have believed she was one of the biggest stars in that Royal Rumble.
And you have to think, like, at the time, I'm sure there were people arguing that, the fans won't buy it, they'll shit on it, but people were into it. People love seeing Chyna in there.
Yeah, and she looked great at this stage too. I don't know what work she had done at this stage, but I think this is the best version of Chyna. She looked like Xena Warrior Princess / Wonder Woman / the Ninth Wonder of the World. I think This was the best version of Chyna.
Ninth wonder of the world, making WWF history. The first woman ever to enter the Royal Rumble match.
Her next first is that she manages to qualify for the King of the Ring also.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, not to put a damper on it, but the story is that Triple H says that he has nothing to prove because he's won it before, and he gives up a spot to Chyna.
Yeah.
But she still has to win her way through, and she beats Val Venus on a qualifying match on Heat.
Yeah, I like this match. When Val Venus comes out, he does his usual stick. You know, the big Valvoski. He says the big Valvoski is a lot like Chyna's dog, but Chyna interrupts it and attacks him. So I've always wondered. I wondered what he was going to say.
I like to think it's like one of those things like the joke in Breakfast Club when he's crawling through the roof that there actually is no punchline.
Yeah.
And if no one had attacked him, he would have been stuck and had to come up with something.
Yeah. I think Shane says in commentary, like, don't talk about Chyna's dog.
The thing I noticed about this was that this was when Nicole Bass was with Val Venus.
Oh, yes, right.
And Nicole Bass was probably the only woman at this time anyway who was like physically even close to Chyna. And this is the only time I remember them being in the same place at the same time.
I think she was bigger than Chyna. You're right. That could have been a match.
She was bigger than Test. She was huge.
She was a massive. But no one ever called her a man. Do you ever notice that?
So the King of the Ring tournament itself, this was, I don't know, I have kind of, despite some of the matches not being great, I have a soft spot in my heart for King of the Ring 99. I think it's because X-Pac got to the final.
Oh, so who did Chyna compete against at the King of the Ring?
So she gets a first round match, and it's Chyna against the Road Dogg.
The Road Dogg.
And this is the first lengthy match you would say she had. Mm-hmm. And I didn't enjoy watching it back, to be honest. It's kind of weird that Chyna's the heel, so she's obviously working on top, and Road Dogg kind of has to take all the offense all along.
Yeah.
But she kind of works in slow motion, I want to say, and Road Dogg kind of looks a bit weird, kind of just lying there and taking it when he could easily just roll away, do something back. It just didn't work. And this was like soon after Kane and Big Show had one of the worst King of the Ring matches in history.
I hate this match.
So some of it was a bit hard to watch. She's definitely in the early stages of getting her ring work to be nice and crisp anyway.
Yeah.
But Triple H is with her again. He's working as her heater again at ringside, and he knocks Road Dogg out with a chain and tries to drag Chyna onto him.
Yeah.
But Shawn Michaels, who was still around every now and then, comes out and ejects Triple H from ringside, and Chyna has to go it alone.
Was this Commissioner Shawn Michaels?
This was Commissioner Shawn Michaels out wearing a t-shirt to plug his wrestling school, which a few people saw that you might know now.
One boy called Daniel, was it?
Yeah, and Big Spanky. But so Chyna uses the distraction, the low blow, the Road Dogg, which is, as you know, is the ending for everyone. But not the Road Dogg. No, he's the first man in history to ever think of this. He's wearing a cup.
He is wearing a cup.
A metal cup, no less. Proving that he is the smartest man alive and how anyone hasn't done it against Chyna before. I mean, if I was getting into a ring anyway, I'd be wearing a cup just in case.
But we've seen this in recent memory in WWE as well. There was the Shinsuke AJ feud, and it was centered around low blows. And it was very frustrating to watch AJ getting low blowed every week. Wear a cup. Road Dogg did it in 1999.
It felt like AJ was getting punched in the dick for 3 months.
I didn't enjoy that. I enjoy a good punch in the dick, but not one as AJ.
So, Chyna, she gets through to King of the Ring. She doesn't win. But, again, it's another in a long list of firsts that you have to give her. No other woman had done it before, and no other woman has done it since. And you have to say that she just went onward and upward, because the next thing she does is even crazier to think about now. During the summer of 1999, things are going back and forth. It's Austin, Undertaker, Triple H and Mankind are all in the title hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow there's a number one contender match that comes about between Chyna, Triple H and The Undertaker, with Jesse Ventura on commentary, as he's going to be the special referee at SummerSlam. So Chyna gets taken out early, and it is kind of Triple H and Undertaker all along. But when she does come back, she turns on Triple H, not in a big way, but just for the match's sake.
Mm-hmm.
But Undertaker has no problem laying her out with a chokeslam. But again, it's Austin that comes out, and he grabs a chair on the way and just destroys Triple H with a chair and rolls Chyna on him to help her win the match, and she becomes the first ever female number one contender to the WWF title.
It's amazing to look back on that. Obviously, the match didn't happen. I think WWE missed the boat. I think they should have went ahead with it, to be honest.
I think they were probably afraid, like, okay, let's test the water. Let's see what kind of reaction she gets. They're not going to put it on last at SummerSlam because people might not pay to see a man versus woman in a title match where I don't think anyone would have believed that Austin would lose.
Yeah.
But it didn't get a terrible reaction either. People popped because it's something they'd never seen before, and because Chyna was kind of half believable.
She definitely was. You think Stone Cold might have had a wee thing for Chyna. He's helped her win a lot.
Like every time we look back at one of these moments, Austin's involved somehow.
I would like to have seen Chyna versus Austin, to be honest. I remember at the time like being really shocked that Chyna was a number one contender for the WWF title. I sort of wish they had went ahead with it.
Well, they let people kind of believe it for a week or so, didn't they? And then like they didn't sort of undo it until the next week on Raw. So there were even graphics made of Chyna against Austin with Jesse Ventura as the special guest referee.
Yeah. Battle of the Sexes for the WWF Championship.
It is a huge accomplishment, and again, sort of like they don't push her all the way. She got to the Royal Rumble and didn't win it. She got to King of the Ring and didn't win it. And again here, she becomes number one contender, but she doesn't win the title. But you can't take anything away from the moments. This time it's a return in Mankind and Triple H to get involved, and eventually it's Mankind, Triple H and Austin at SummerSlam. But for a week there, it was short-lived, but for a wee while, Chyna was the first ever number one contender with a set of boobs.
Yeah. First and only.
Since Mabel. Again, the Chyna 1999 train keeps going. And in September, I guess, Jeff Jarrett has set out an open challenge for a shot at his Intercontinental title. And Chyna cuts in and she accepts the challenge. So she puts pen to paper and becomes the first Intercontinental title number one contender female as well. Yeah. And this is great because it turns into a storyline where Double J is just going around knocking the tits off women for weeks. He attacks Lillian Garcia, Fabulous Moolah, Cindy Margolis, who was a model at the time apparently, and he'd also started treating Deborah pretty shitty too because he was on his way out and she was sticking around, so they had to sort of split them somehow. And he brings in Miss Kitty and starts favouring her over Deborah.
Jarrett was really bad at this time. I remember him like bashing Mae Young in the head with a guitar and stuff. He was like really dastardly. He
really laid it in. Like you see some of these moments, and especially as the storyline went on, where they start using like the household items and stuff against each other. And there's one match where he comes out and he just nails Chyna in the head with a toaster of all things, and completely knocks her out. And then he puts her in like a hamper for laundry, and pushes her off the stage back in the loading dock.
Oh yeah, and like you see her like covered in blood and stuff.
It's really like graphic for man on woman violence. Like they show her fall like being attended to for medics after coming out of the laundry basket, and there's blood everywhere.
Yeah, so they go on to have 2 matches for the IC titles, isn't that right?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one's at Unforgiven, I think.
Yep, that's when the referee strike, the famous referee strike of 1989.
You remember that? I remember WCW replicated it a few months later then as well. And it was like all the scab referees, all these kind of backstage hands just wearing the ref t-shirts. It was kind of comical. It was kind of funny.
It was funny, and it was the closest WWE ever got to mentioning a union on their TV. The best was Harvey Whippleman in this match because he's wearing glasses as a referee, which you just never see.
So I think there's a bit of a fuck finish here, Patrick, isn't that right?
There is. After Harvey Whippleman gets knocked down, he can't find his glasses. Deborah comes out and she nails Jeff Jarrett with a guitar.
Yeah.
So Chyna pins him, gets the one, gets her a massive pop that you have to think they did this as a test as well to see how people would react.
Yeah.
But the head scab referee, Tom Pritchard, comes down and he uses VAR. And they overturn the decision by playing the video on the screen, which they never did.
No, Tom. How Tom make up the rules as he goes along.
But the thing, during the match, I don't know if you noticed, but when they were at ringside, Chyna blatantly used the chair on him and nothing happened. But we'll ignore that because the storyline had to roll on.
It did. So they have a rematch then. This is the classic one. I think this is one of Chyna's most defining moments. They had the good housekeeping match at No Mercy.
Yeah, I think this was her best career match. Like, they had plenty of distractions to use and plenty of gimmicks to keep it interesting. But the storyline building up to it was great. It was madness. It was Jeff Jarrett battering women, which shouldn't be funny, but the way they did it, it was.
Yeah, it was really intense, and I have to commend Jeff Jarrett. I don't know if there was bad blood in the company, and in a way when he left, it sort of felt like it felt like he left in bad terms. I don't know. I don't know if it was punishment. I don't know if they tried to damage his character, because it was really, although we did see man versus woman in WWF, I remember this just being really shocking.
It really was. I mean, there's nothing more shocking than busting a guitar over a 90-year-old woman's head. You know what I mean? So
Mae Young, what a trooper.
she really, really is. She took some absolutely serious punches. And in this match, in one of the matches, I can't remember if it was the Unforgiven one or the No Mercy one, but they get in the ring as well. And they start like punching him and laying in like wrestling chops. And then he double clotheslines them and nearly takes their heads off. He didn't pull a single punch no matter how old they were.
Yeah. It was this one. It was the good housekeeping match. I remember it well.
Well, the story is, I don't know if you know the behind the scenes rumour story, is that Jeff Jarrett was sort of not owed money, but there was money that he had coming to him in the future after he left the company. Mm-hmm. And before this match, he not holds up Vince, I don't want to say that because I don't know, but he basically makes sure he gets paid. He negotiates with him backstage and says he's not going out there until he gets the money all up front before he leaves.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of back and forth. Eventually they have him make an agreement, and as rumour has it, after he got pinned, he supposedly walked straight from the ring, covered in flour, all the way through the back, straight into his car, and right on the WCW, where he became the chosen one.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So, I mean, there's a couple of references to that since, if you remember, on the night that Nitro and Raw were simulcast, Vince is watching the TV, and Jeff Jarrett's on it, and he makes a wee snide comment. So people thought for years that he's never going to be in the Hall of Fame, but never say never.
Yeah, never say never. So the No Mercy match, the good housekeeping match, Jarrett was really obsessed with teaching women their role, get in the kitchen and make the dinner kind of thing, wasn't he? So for the weeks leading up, as you mentioned, he was like beating up women with like irons and iron boards and cutlery and all kinds of stuff. And he makes his way to the ring with the kitchen sink. I remember that.
Yeah. I'll bring everything but the kitchen sink, Chyna.
And again, a brutal match. Basically, essentially, it was a hardcore match. But the rules were you're allowed to use any weapon as long as it's a household item.
Yeah. So that plays a big part in the finish, because what happens is Jeff Jarrett decides he's going to use the Intercontinental title as a weapon. He knocks her out and he's got the match won, but our favourite referee, Teddy Long, decides,
hold on a minute, player.
that shit isn't a household object.
I like that the king chimes in. He's like, it's a household item in Jeff Jarrett's house. I really like that.
Yeah, because he's not wrong.
I know.
I've got a title in my office here.
So do I.
But in that sense, you could kind of argue that the guitar isn't a household object. It's only in some people's houses. But
yeah,
that's how Chyna gets the win. She smashes him with a guitar and she gets the pin with no problem. But I don't know. I guess that's okay.
Yeah. I like that Ted Long counted the 3 for Jeff Jarrett and then he changed his mind. He's like, nah.
You know what? I'm not letting this happen.
That's how he got his GM job.
That's right, because he got rid of the guy that held up Vince McMahon for $200,000 or whatever it was.
The referees inform me that Jeff Jarrett cannot use the Intercontinental Championship to win a match. It is not a household item. Therefore, this match must continue.
It's an item around Jeff Jarrett's household.
Well, the ruling is
He wears it to sleep.
it's not a household item. It's what the ruling was.
I've seen it in his house.
On the figure 4 on Teddy Long.
I don't blame
Wait,
him.
Chyna's got the guitar.
Look out, Jeff.
Oh, man. Chyna with a guitar.
That's not a household item, is it?
It certainly is. I guess it is. I don't know. The referee down the count. And Chyna.
Teddy. Love
And-
Teddy Long.
One of the before we go on to the next feud, one of the outcomes of this is that Chyna adopts the cat as her own, and she becomes kind of a Chyna mini-me. Mini-me, stop humping the Lawler.
Give us your best Miss Kitty impersonation
Of her or of Jerry Lawler?
of Jerry Lawler.
Kitty, 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 kitty.
It's not bad.
Not my first time. So, after winning the Intercontinental title, she has... A normal person would have a target on her back, but Chyna has an even bigger target. And the first person to take aim is Y2J, Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
He is absolutely disgusted that a woman has the Intercontinental title.
I have to say, I like, we went from a really intense feud with Double J, and then Jericho. Jericho, who was a wee bit lost in the shuffle, in my opinion. I was really excited for Jericho coming into WWF, and I felt like he got lost in the shuffle really, really quick. But
Yeah.
he got into this feud with Chyna, and he took what Double J did and he intensified it by 100.
He did. Like, he tells a story in his book where he was feeling a bit lost at the time, and he kind of was ready to storm into Vince McMahon's office and say, you know what, just give me anybody. Give me a feud with anybody. I don't care who it is. And one night he gets called in, and Vince says to him, you got any problem working with Chyna?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not too thrilled about it, but what's the big deal? Like, James Bond had to fight Grace Jones. There's other men that had to fight women in history, so he can make something of it. And
Yeah.
once he found out that the Intercontinental title was going to be involved, he was like, alright, fuck it, we'll own it. Vince tells him, don't go easy on her, just lay it on because it's the best way to get her over. But he says that my favourite part of this is he managed to catch Jeff Jarrett before he left and told him, I'm working Chyna after you. And Jeff Jarrett just said, good luck, you're going to need it on the way out. But Jericho talks about her being kind of a wee bit schizo, where one minute she'd be goofy and funny and the next day she'd barely even talk to him. But I think it sort of resulted in some pretty decent chemistry between the two on TV.
Yeah, I remember this as being some of Chyna's best matches, to be honest. So Jericho and Chyna, they went on to have a couple matches. I think it's Survivor Series 99.
Mm-hmm.
The one where Austin got ran down.
Exactly. They were the match after it.
Oh, were they? So
were.
it definitely wasn't them. They
They had
should have
to-
been in the all clear.
They were a gorilla. They're cleared.
They're alright. They have eyewitnesses where they were. And Chyna successfully defends the IC title. I think it was her first title defense. And
Yeah.
she won with a top rope pedigree, which I don't think we've ever seen before.
No, exactly. I don't even think Triple H got to do one of those. I'm sure we've seen them in indie matches since, but this was something you'd never seen at the time. It was a step above a pedigree. But the interesting thing about this is that this is sort of around the time that they started separating Triple H and Chyna on TV, where they made a conscious effort to change her music to something different from his, and they stopped coming out together. So she soon after this stopped using the pedigree too, so maybe this was like a last hurrah for the move.
Yeah, it is interesting, and we haven't mentioned it. At this time, Chyna was weaving in and out of different storylines. She was with Triple H during all that kind of, Triple H got butt with the snake and Vince McMahon won the WWF title, and so she was a part of that storyline, but at the same time she was competing against Jeff Jarrett as a babyface. So she was dipping in and out of heel, babyface. She was in a lot of different storylines.
And that night that we mentioned earlier, where Jeff Jarrett threw her off the loading dock, was the match was Triple H and Chyna against Austin and JR. So she was like in the main event. And the weird thing is here that not only do they separate Chyna and Triple H, but at this time DX reforms, and she's not involved.
Yeah, that's right. This time they had was Tori and Stephanie McMahon involved.
And no Chyna. So you have to wonder how early the Triple H and Stephanie romance blossomed, don't you?
Yeah.
We'll get into that maybe later.
Gossip. So Y2J and Chyna, they had a rematch at Armageddon again for the IC title, and again another intense match.
So the match at Survivor Series, Jericho had threatened on Heat that if he didn't win, he was going to have a sex change.
Oh yeah.
So the next night on Raw, after losing, Chyna comes to the ring and starts taunting him with various items that would be reserved for a lady, such as Tampax, a douche, and tiny scissors to snip his willy off, apparently.
Oh, Jericho.
Jericho takes his bad, and we get a really violent scene backstage where Jericho leads a cameraman into a dark room, and he has Chyna tied to a chair, and it's like a bit like Reservoir Dogs. He's trying to make her, without the music obviously, but he's trying to make her admit that he's the better man, and she embarrassed him in front of everyone or whatever, and then he just smashes her hand with a hammer.
Yeah. You know, first thing I gotta say, what I really like about this segment is Jericho addresses the cameraman and he's like, come with me, do not leave, no matter what happens, don't stop filming, and he drags the cameraman into the room. I really like that.
It's not a random cameraman who's in the room and should be helping, but isn't.
Yeah, he's not like the guy who was in with Sammy.
Exactly. He could have stopped the sexual assault and he didn't bother his arse.
Yeah, and again, talk about today's product. We're in the reality era, quote unquote. I wish they would say, you know, we've got a team of cameramen around backstage and they're instructed to record everything you see.
Yeah,
Just give us a reason why there's a cameraman in a room,
exactly.
zooming in and out of everything that
Even
happens.
do it like TNA where they're kind of creepy cameramen who just film everything.
Yeah, I really like that about TNA. I know we're going off topic, but I like how they're like creeping behind a shelf or, you know, looking through a window. I like that. So Jericho smashes Chyna's hand with a hammer.
Yeah. He gives it a full on smack, and they do replay it, and it does look pretty good. And they sort of show the outcome of it, and she's got this gory, bloody hand again with the super violence with Chyna, like there's blood everywhere. And then the next week, they say, well, not the next week, on the next episode on SmackDown, they say that it's her thumb that's been shattered, which is the biggest heel move I can imagine. You know the amount of things you can't do without a thumb? You can't play computer games.
You can't.
I mean, SmackDown or Attitude was probably out at the time. Maybe Warzone. And she probably wanted to play as herself, you know.
She had to make herself because she's not on Warzone.
Do you think she used to make herself and then beat Jesus out of Stephanie McMahon?
Oh, probably. I do.
She
I
couldn't.
do that.
She wouldn't be able to hitchhike.
True.
She wouldn't be able to send a text message, but this was a mostly pre-text message world, wasn't it?
Come on, Patrick, there's no text messages in 1999.
But I'll tell you what she probably found hardest.
What?
You couldn't close a button without your thumb, and she had millions of buttons on her gear.
Per Chyna.
So this was probably the worst thing that could have happened there. But it builds up into the rematch at Armageddon 99 between Chyna and Chris Jericho. And what I love about it is that Chris Jericho works the thumb. You know, you isolate a body part. Well, he isolates your thumb.
Good in-ring psychology by Y2J. And it's the little things that goes a long way.
He's always the king of doing something that's never been seen before. And this is the first and I think only time I've seen someone tie someone up on the ropes and then drop kick their thumb. So the outcome of this one is that Jericho finally topples Chyna and wins the Intercontinental title. It's not a great match. Again, it sort of feels like Chyna's working in slow motion, and there's even a point where she just ignores the fact that he does like a slide dropkick on her. But the outcome is Jericho wins the title, and they sort of gain like a bit of a mutual respect, and they start working together over the next couple of weeks and months, which leads into Chyna's most famous storyline, you have to say.
So Jericho finally wins the big one, and Chyna is dethroned of her IC title run just around 2 months after winning it. But Patrick, how important was it that Chyna won the IC title? I mean, she could have won the European title, she could have won the hardcore title, she could have won the light heavyweight title that was around at the time, and it wouldn't have the same significance. She won the workhorse title. She won the title that, you know, Ricky Steamboat had, the title that Shawn Michaels had. How important do you think that was?
It was a definite show of confidence because, as you say, they could have just threw her a title to carry around as a showpiece. But the Intercontinental title obviously had that history and it had that respect, and it is the title just below the world title. And as mentioned, it's the one that Jericho wanted to win. It's the one that everyone sort of who loved and respected like the in-ring performers really wanted to have.
Yeah.
And to give it to Chyna was, as I say, a great vote of confidence.
Absolutely. And you know, maybe we were kind of accustomed to seeing Chyna carry the titles because she carried Triple H's title, she carried, you know, X-Pac's titles, whatever, Shawn Michaels. But the title looked good on Chyna, I have to say. And not for one moment did any fan that I knew anyway, did they bat an eye and think that Chyna shouldn't hold the IC title.
No, it didn't look out of place. She did look like she belonged, and she was mixing up on there with people who were that level just below world champions. Where Chris Jericho, you have to say, he was on his way up too. So it was a good way to establish her at that level, and I think it was a good level for her. I don't think you could have put her any lower than that because it wouldn't have been really fair.
Yeah.
And I don't think you could have put her any higher because I'm not really sure she was there either. But again, you can't take it away. It's one of those things that's always going to exist. Chyna was the first female Intercontinental Champion, and I wonder if we'll ever see one again.
Yeah, and what a year for Chyna. 1999, first Royal Rumble, first King of the Ring, first IC. A year like that will never be matched for a woman again, or will it?
So at some point in March, after the Radicals have joined the WWE, they have to find something else to do with them after their debut. And Eddie Guerrero starts going after Chyna and referring to her as his mamacita and trying to woo her and win her over. But at this time, she's unofficially with Jericho ever since Armageddon. They've kind of been teaming up, but it's never sort of said whether they're together or what the story is.
Yeah, were they kind of like co-IC champions for a while?
They were, very briefly, and that built into the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, a triple threat with Hardcore Holly, wasn't that right?
Yeah, where it didn't matter who won as long as it wasn't Hardcore Holly. But this is, again, another first for Chyna. At WrestleMania here, she has her first match on the card.
Yeah.
She's backed people up before, but she's never actually wrestled in a match. And at WrestleMania 2000, it's Chyna and Too Cool against three of the Radicals, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, and Eddie Guerrero. And I know what you're thinking. We haven't mentioned it yet, because up until so far, she hasn't had it. But now, she has the bazooka.
She has the bazooka! I love the bazooka.
Bazooka Joni, I like the colour.
Bazooka Joni.
What did you think of the bazooka entrance?
I love the bazooka entrance. It gave Chyna power. Speaking for myself, I studied film and media, and I'm sure some of our listeners out there might have as well. So, we wouldn't be estranged to terms like the male gaze and the female gaze and the Oedipus complex and stuff like that. Chyna being given the bazooka was let's call it was a phallic object. It represents power. What we look at women as weaker objects than us, and the bazooka. The bazooka gave Chyna back that power that she could stand toe to toe with any man. We haven't mentioned before this time, Chyna, in her matches, a lot of the matches were fuck finishes. A lot of them had interference. Our main man, Stone Cold Steve Austin, helped her win a lot of matches. But in the year 2000, I felt Chyna stood toe to toe with every man. It didn't become strange for her to get clean ones over the likes of Val Venus, Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko. Chyna was on level par with every man competitor. There was no more fuck finishes. There was no more fluke ones. And the bazooka entrance was just great to give Chyna her own identity.
Yeah, it was, and it was like people were used to it now. They'd seen it, and it wasn't terrible like they expected. And now they were like, you know what, it's not bad to go out there and sell for Chyna. It's believable, and we can have a good match. But I want to ask you one thing. If the bazooka is a phallic object, does that mean every time she shoots it, she's shooting jizz out into the crowd?
Oh, Chyna!
But another thing I noticed, like, this isn't a massive match in her career. We could just mention it in passing. So per Chyna, her trousers split like minutes into the match, and they eventually bust before the end of the match. But she does get the one. She does a sleeper driver because she's been made to retire the pedigree at this point, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's nothing special, but it leads on to the big team-up moment. The next night on Raw, Jericho's defending his newly won European title against Eddie Guerrero, and Chyna helps Eddie Guerrero win.
Chyna. Latino
She
heat.
explains. That's how she explains it on the next SmackDown. She says she couldn't resist your Latino heat. And everybody has their favourite moments here from Latino Heat era, Chyna and Eddie Guerrero. Do you have a favourite one yourself?
I liked. You remember like one time that Chyna had like a metal bar in like the roses.
That's right. She hide a metal bar
Yeah.
to help Eddie win the matches.
I just remember thinking they were really cute. I remember thinking they were really romantic and stuff. I liked them as a couple. I liked them as a pairing.
They did it really well because Eddie was like a bad guy first, and over the course of the run with Chyna, he became a face. And my highlight of it was they sort of they say that Eddie is only just now getting his GED, which for non-Americans is a high school level diploma.
Yeah.
But because he does this, he gets to go to a prom, which is on the same night as Backlash. So supposedly they've just been to the prom and they show up at Backlash in his car, and he's still wearing his tux and Chyna's in her prom dress. Mm-hmm. And what I like about it is that it's Eddie Guerrero against Essa Rios, which is one of those matchups you don't get to see often. And Essa Rios is somebody you never really heard about after this time. But I kind of liked them, and this is one of those matches that, I don't know, it was a pretty fun match, like, because you also had Chyna at ringside for Eddie Guerrero, but you had Lita at ringside for Essa Rios, who had just debuted.
Mm-hmm. Again, Essa Rios, it was good to see him in action, and it was good to see personality from him, because you see him in the ring sometimes and he was just done and did his high flying stuff and he was gone. I think it was a good match. I remember Lita ripped Chyna's clothes off.
Yeah, which is odd because it was one of the things that Chyna never really did, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But they do play it off as like where it was usually embarrassing. Chyna kind of owns it.
Yeah, Chyna embraces it.
And Eddie stands and just admires what he's got.
It was fun. It was good times.
I liked it too. It was definitely my highlight of their run. But they sort of, over the next few months, they get over, but they sort of start to have a wee bit of friction.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of starts where Eddie beats Chyna in a King of the Ring qualifier, stopping her getting into the tournament again. And it builds up to a match between Chyna and Eddie against Val Venus and Trish Stratus with the title on the line. Chyna ends up pinning Trish and she takes the title away. So Eddie plays it off like he's not upset, but you sort of knew that this is the beginning of a problem here. And
it's important to mention, Patrick, like we've seen, like we were so used to seeing Chyna put her hands on the men. When Chyna put her hands on another female competitor, the audience absolutely lost their shit.
Yeah, because they've got to be thinking, like, if she can destroy a man the way she does, like, what is she doing to poor wee Trish, who was a rookie at this point? So, as we say, it does build up, and Eddie manages to talk himself into being a part of one of Chyna's matches, and they get this nice moment where she gets knocked out with a belt, but he's over consoling her and making sure she's okay, but while he's doing that, her shoulders are down. So it's 1, 2, 3, and it's a new Intercontinental Champion in Eddie Guerrero at this stage.
So let me fill you in what happened here. So Chyna, as she always was, interlinked with Triple H somehow. So at this time, there was like this love triangle between Kurt Angle, Stephanie, and Triple H, and somehow Chyna becomes involved in this. And I think on SmackDown, did Chyna assault Stephanie? Do you remember this?
I don't remember much of those two being together, but I know there were moments where they interacted.
So we gotta find this for our social media. There is definitely a SmackDown where Chyna DDT Stephanie McMahon and the audience go absolutely berserk. So the following Raw, it's like punishment. Chyna defends the title against Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle.
And the thing I loved about this was, like, on the way out after Eddie's won the match, you see that, you know, he's kind of in it for himself, because as he's going to leave with Chyna, he notices he's left the belt behind him, and he lifts it and he hides it behind his back all the way up the ramp.
This is the beginning of the lie, cheat and steal Eddie Guerrero.
So this results in a whole pile of big arguments that they have, but around this time is when Chyna's Playboy cover is coming out, and they work in, like, Eddie's like the jealous boyfriend, and they do this really famous skit where he goes to the Playboy mansion and he don't want nobody to see his mamacita naked.
It's great. I can remember he's in the Playboy mansion and it's like all CCTV and he's like going fucking apeshit in there.
And he needs two guys to carry him off. And as it builds, you have a storyline kind of going on. Rikishi's involved somehow. Don't ask me how, I can't remember. But he's the one that plays a tape of Eddie Guerrero trying to maneuver behind her back and get her Playboy cancelled.
Can I help you?
You sure can, Nasir. You know, I'd like to talk to the man in charge, you know, the boss man, the buddy man, Hefner, okay? I want to talk to him about Mommy's pictures coming out in his magazine.
Look, sir, I don't know how old your mother is, but I can guarantee you Mr. Hefner is not going to have her
You're
history.
misunderstanding me, okay? I'm not talking about mommy. I'm talking about mommy, mamacita, okay? There's a big difference.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And just as it looks like they're going to split, he gets down on one knee and proposes just to save his own arse. Soon after, obviously, the engaged couple now, Chyna is in the ring with Eddie in a match, and our good old friend GTV makes its return.
Oh, GTV.
GTV this time, and the downfall of many a superstar before it is the downfall here of poor Eddie Guerrero. It shows him leaving the shower, but he's shouting back to someone who's in the shower, and it's not Chyna. It's the Godfather's hose.
I thought you were going to say it was Sammy.
No, he wishes it was Sammy.
Godfather's hose. GTV was great.
Sammy or Vicky, I don't know.
Wow, what was your favourite GTV moment, Patrick, of all time?
Mine's has to be, they call you the Big Show.
Yeah, mine too. That's like the most famous one, isn't it?
It's gotta be. So, I don't know if you know, but one of these hoes in the shower actually went on to be Victoria.
I did know this.
So there's a wee snippet for you. But obviously, Chyna is distraught. But what I noticed is like the reveal here gets Eddie a massive pop.
I remember the blow off of this. I remember like when they broke up. I remember like Chyna was crying and stuff, and that was so unusual as well. If Chyna was such a strong character.
Yeah, they never really showed her vulnerable, but this was one of these first times that they saw it, and it kind of, I don't know if it was her idea or maybe she didn't want to be this vulnerable character, but it's around this time that her and Triple H are officially finished, and it's debated whether they got together, Triple H and Stephanie got together while he was still with Chyna. But this is when things start to kind of sour on her relationship with WWE. She is still doing Playboy at this time, but you can see she's definitely fallen down the pecking order. Something like Playboy coming out, you would imagine her to be in a really big profile match.
Yeah, a prominent position, yeah.
Maybe in there with someone, maybe around that Intercontinental level again. Maybe something else, but instead she is kind of relegated here to working with the Righty Censor, who were a hot act at the time, but it puts her kind of on the women's title level, which is somewhere where I don't think Chyna has ever belonged.
No, you're absolutely right, Patrick. I never imagined her in the women's contendership, and that's where Chyna found herself.
So what happens is briefly is Chyna, the RTC have taken issue with her because they're trying to save America and its morality, and Playboy goes against those morals. So during a match, they come out, Val Venus attacks Chyna while she's fighting Ivory, and they set her up and they give her a spike piledriver, which is pretty vicious looking. She does a good Rob Van Dam bounce when she hits the mat.
Yeah, it was nasty. And Chyna was out of action for a while after that, wasn't she?
Yeah, they wrote her off for a month, brought her back for the Royal Rumble, but during the match again, she goes to do her handspring elbow, which is her cartwheel and a backflip elbow. Mm-hmm. But she collapses when she hits it, and apparently re-injures her neck, and they even do the whole Jerry Lawler leaves commentary and goes to check on her. She gets taken out on a stretcher. They mock her over the next couple of weeks, and she finally comes back at WrestleMania 17, and she gets her Chyna's first and only WrestleMania singles match.
Yeah.
And she just squashes Ivory, batters her, gives her a gorilla press slam, and just leans on her to win the women's title in a bit of a nothing match, but a big moment for Chyna.
A huge moment for Chyna. As you said, kind of a nothing match. The build up for the match was really good. I remember Ivory beating the shit out of a cardboard cutout of Chyna and stuff in the lead up. And Chyna just comes out and destroys her. And it was great.
Yeah, I remember Ivory being great in like a backstage segment they did where Chyna had done like an interview in a neck brace with JR. So the RTC do it, but it's Val Venus and Ivory, and she's there mocking Chyna, which was really good because you didn't get to see a lot of Ivory doing stuff like that either.
Yeah. And at the close of the match, Chyna does like this really, really long gorilla press. You know, she holds Ivory up there for a long time. And it's just a great shot of Chyna. You see all the light bulbs of the disposable cameras going. Something you don't see in shows anymore. Really beautiful shot.
It's kind of what you would maybe point to as everyone has their WrestleMania moment, and this is maybe Chyna's. That image of her holding Ivory up, and then obviously the image of her holding the women's title high. Maybe not a title that she ever wanted to have, but I don't know, she kind of looks happy to have it.
And it is over. And Chyna, was it academics? Who can say?
And new women's champion, Chyna.
But in any event, Ivory has lost the WWF Women's Championship. Chyna is the WWF Women's Champion. She did it at WrestleMania.
So, kind of after she won the women's title, we hear on commentary, like JR mentions things like Chyna has retired from competing against men. She won't be doing that anymore. She's solely going to be competing in the women's division. And for the next number of weeks, Chyna just sort of destroys the women's competition. But somewhere along the line, Lita challenges her for the women's championship. And that leads to, I think, was Chyna's last match in WWE?
Her official last WWF match was Judgment Day 2001, and it's one of those, I don't know, on paper dream matches that I think people would point to, I wish Chyna and Lita, but it happened, and I think people forget that it happened because it wasn't hyped up as anything massive. Lita wasn't the star that she would become just yet.
Yeah.
So Chyna
I think you're right. Had this match happened maybe a year or two later, it could have been a bigger match. So the match happens at Judgment Day. Chyna was just about to relinquish the title. I think it kind of felt like it might have been Chyna's last match. It did feel it felt like the roster was changing. Chyna makes her way to the ring, and she's wearing a kind of very Charlotte Flair-esque. She's wearing like peacock feathers and stuff, and the camera cuts to like a shot in the crowd, and it's just a wee girl holding the sign that just says Chyna, my hero. And I always remember that. That sign stands out to me. I guess Chyna was a huge role model to girls.
Yeah, it's definitely a large contrast from, Chyna is my hero to Chyna has a willy that we talked about earlier on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But as you said, the match, it's not much. I was kind of excited to go back and watch it because I hadn't seen it in a long time. So this is one of the matches that I did watch in the library, and I didn't feel so dodgy because it was female versus female. Again, the things have progressed. The last time these two were in the ring together, they were tearing each other's clothes off. Now they're in a competitive match for a prestigious championship.
And Chyna's top does kind of fall off in this, but it's blurred out on the network. The top just can't contain her bazookas. But
yeah,
as we said, it does feel like a change in the guard kind of thing. But I think what would have really topped it off was if Lita actually did won the title here. It could have been a great passing of the torch moment. And maybe it was planned down the road, but as things panned out for Chyna, as we'll say, it didn't really go there. But I think it should have been here. It would have been a great moment.
It's a shame that Chyna's career in WWE kind of ended on a bit of a damp squib.
She definitely petered out.
Yeah, but in Chyna's short career, as we mentioned, look how many accolades that she had. But Chyna's legacy didn't end here.
So, I don't know about you, but I don't think Chyna ever really wanted the women's title. She talked about it at times being a demotion for her and that she didn't belong there. And I think it'd be different if she started off there and then moved up to fighting with the men. But she started off on top. She went to King of the Ring, Royal Rumble, IC title, but then she went down to the women's title. And as women's champion, it could have maybe been a revitalisation for the division. But I don't know, at the time, the women's roster was skinnier than Spike Dudley. So, was there really anything for her to do? Soon after she gets released anyway, she would claim that it was tied to Triple H and Stephanie having an affair, and that once she brought it up to Vince McMahon, she was canned. She's also at different times said that no, she left because she wanted to pursue an acting career. JR, being talent relations, said that it was mutually agreed. But either way, that's it for Chyna in the WWE. She was gone in late 2001.
Yeah, I listened recently to the Michael Landsberg Off the Record interview with Chyna from 2001, and as I mentioned earlier, so on this interview you hear a very coherent Chyna, give her reasoning to why she decided to leave WWE as opposed to her being let go. And she claims, doing Playboy, she said she made more money doing one Playboy than what she made in her 6-year career in WWF. She talks about trying to renegotiate her contract, and she explains that China was paid the same level as the woman talent. She was paid lower than main event talent, but she felt that what she contributed, and in fact what she did, star, was at a level of top tier talent. There's no denying that China at times was a main eventer, main event level talent, but she clearly wasn't being paid the same as maybe Triple H. Who else would have been on her level? Jericho, Kurt Angle. So why wasn't China being paid the same level as those stars? Why was she being paid at a lower level? Because she's a woman? That can't be right.
It could be maybe that classic gender wage gap. I think one of the things you have to keep in mind too, though, with China is that in a lot of her interviews since WWE, some of them she sounds like she's trying to save face a bit. She tries to spin things in her own kind of defense. It's not far beyond the realms of possibility that she was getting paid less. I wouldn't be surprised. They might have kept her on a manager salary, so to speak, long into the fact that she was already an Intercontinental Champion. I think she definitely, she should have been on the same wages as Road Dogg, X-Pac, whoever else was around her,
Yeah, definitely. And China stated that she was quite happy to continue to do things like Playboy and stuff as China, as a commodity for the WWF, which I know now the company's PG and they've kind of, they washed their hands of that stuff. But at that time, WWF seemed to be, they were all over it. There was no Twitter then. They couldn't trend on Twitter. Like, their way of getting out there was being on magazine covers, the TV Guide, Playboy, Muscle and Fitness.
Yeah, and they were still open to it because, Tori Wilson went on to do it. Maria did it. So they weren't closed off to Playboy just yet.
Yeah.
But so Chyna, she goes on and she sticks in wrestling for a short while. She goes to New Japan. She tries to she spends, I think, a few months there. She's always had a kind of close thing with Japan, but it's kind of around this time too that you start to see the real life issues creep in.
Yeah.
It's soon after this that she starts going out with X-Pac, and they decide in their infinite wisdom that they're gonna record one of their sex sessions and release it as a tape. They were actually engaged at the time of making the film, and they reached out to get it released. There's controversy about this.
What's it called, Patrick?
It was called One Night in China.
One Night in China. Needless to say, I have never seen it, okay?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it, and I can't think of anything worse. I think it would destroy my childhood. But I have looked up some information on it.
He gives her a Bronco Buster in the corner of the bed.
Oh, Patrick, I don't want to know.
I'm making it up.
So, can I tell you a wee bit about the plot?
Let's hear it.
Yeah, so the film features scenes of Chyna and X-Pac, obviously, taking a guided tour through China, intercut with footage of the pair participating in explicit acts.
Ooh. Tell me more.
I'm sort of scaring myself. I should have went incognito. It tells you a little bit about the climax of the film. If you're interested, I'm not going to read it out.
I can imagine. She shot the bazooka off.
Yeah, she shoots the bazooka off on Xbox face. Apparently, Waltman appears to be under the influence during the filming. Something to which he later admitted to, apparently. But Patrick, distribution, that's pretty important. The film sold over 100,000 copies. Was that DVD? Was it Blu-ray? Is it downloads? I don't know. 100,000 copies? That's a lot.
It's a lot for that kind of movie, I would guess. I think there was a lot of stuff about this that, later on that Chyna would claim that she never got paid for it. X-Pac was quick to sort of say, I have proof of the check that you signed, and then they both admitted that they were, as you say, under the influence when they did it, but they live and learn.
And maybe this is a good segue. I know Chyna obviously went on then, and she had somewhat of a pornographic career. I don't know much about it, and I just steered clear from that stuff. For me, Chyna was one of my childhood idols, and I don't necessarily want to see this stuff.
Do you know the titles of the other movies?
Is one The Queen of the Ring?
There's that one, but there's also, we'll talk about Queen of the Ring now in a second, but there was Another Night in China.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, and then there was...
Who was in that one? Mr. Ass?
I'm not even sure. Road Dogg doing pump handle slams. There was then there was her first professional video apparently, which was called Backdoor into China,
Okay.
which is one of my favorite titles ever. But as you say,
It should have been Sliding Door.
the aforementioned Queen of the Ring is, in my opinion, the main reason that they say things like we don't want our kids Googling China, because they've done, other people have done nudes, other people have done porn or whatever, but this one video in particular wasn't just China doing porn. It was China doing porn with 9 men
Okay.
who were dressed as John Cena, Vince McMahon, Triple H, Mean Gene Okerlund.
Mean Gene?
Mean Gene got his Mean Gene face on there. Scheme Gene. But this is an extreme scene. This isn't normal
Okay.
movie making, if you know what I mean. And the fact that there was a guy who looks like Vince McMahon in it and a guy who looks like Triple H in it was never going to help her case for the Hall of Fame. But as well as all this, her public appearances started getting more crazy.
Yeah.
And you started hearing all these other stories about her. She went on the surreal life, and it was very obvious to everyone what sort of issues she was dealing with. She drank a lot. She got in a public fight with X-Pac. She got naked again. But shows started to exploit her and have her on. You have those certain celebrities are going to be car crash TV for you.
I feel like China's life, she was exploited by these trashy journalism, and I think people just took advantage of the state that China was in.
Nah, it's like that trashy kind of, it really is exploitive TV. Shows like Celebrity Rehab, which is sort of famous for not actually helping the people that go on the show. After being on Celebrity Rehab, she ended up in hospital of a suicide attempt, and she would later say that she was in an actual mental hospital. I don't know the PC way to say that, but so her personal issues were really creeping in big time here. And somewhere in the middle of all this, she went to TNA for a brief run.
Yeah.
And, it was short-lived, but I don't know, she didn't look awful.
I know that she had her last professional wrestling match in TNA so she teamed with Kurt Angle, and they faced Jeff Jarrett and Karen Jarrett.
Yeah, the Jarretts.
And, it's not much to talk about the match, really, but for me personally, it was nice to see Chyna's career end with, Jeff Jarrett, someone who was instrumental in her career.
Yeah.
Someone that put her over huge. And also she had kind of a relationship with Kurt Angle as well. So I think it was nice that she ended her career with, her past WWF colleagues.
And to end it on a bit of a high, also, like in the ring at least, because, as I say, it wasn't a completely terrible match. No one talks about it as, oh, did you see how embarrassing Chyna was in her last match? Like, that's never been said, so,
yeah,
it is kind of a high, but it's just unfortunate that she couldn't get her personal life together after this, and it's really, really sad that she couldn't end her own life sort of the same way she ended her wrestling life, with a wee bit of dignity. There's a famous sort of interview now where she went on Opie and Jim Norton's show, and she had just come back from Japan, and she was sort of pushing the narrative that she was okay now, she was like clean, she was in the right frame of mind finally.
Yeah.
And she had this guy with her new manager, who would be with her to the end. And he's a guy that I'm not sure, we have to be careful what we say, that in my opinion, allegedly, I don't know if he was good for her. He was putting her in positions that she might not have been ready for. She was on this radio show in particular. She was whopping out all kinds of accusations, saying that when she was with X-Pac, he was like basically date raping her, that Triple H beat her when they were together, that X-Pac was out scoring from other men by being gay for it. And X-Pac ended up phoning into the show and sort of, I don't want to say, like, debunking her claims and saying that he had proof to otherwise, and she started saying, I'm going to take the high road and not respond. But it was really obvious that these were sort of, I don't want to say, would it be a cry for help? But so it was a very vulnerable Chyna at this time, and apparently, as the rumor goes, her social media team had to frequently remove like rants from the internet that she drunkenly post, and
I remember, just to jump on, Patrick, I remember at this time hearing rumours about she confronted Triple H at Roddy Piper's funeral, and I remember all the tirade YouTube videos and stuff of her kind of drunken rants and stuff. It was hard to watch. As a wrestling fan, as a fan of Chyna, really hard to watch. And it's sad. She's passed away just a little bit over 2 years now, and it's something that didn't have to happen. But yeah, sadly, Chyna passed away. Chyna passed away at the age of 46 on the 20th of April 2016. Sad day for wrestling.
Yeah, things seem to sort of spiral out of control. The manager I mentioned before was making a documentary with her. Maybe he was making her do things that she wasn't emotionally ready for. He talked her into going to WWE headquarters to demand money she felt she was owed, supposedly, and he did try and reunite her with her family, but it's arguable whether she was ready for it.
Yeah.
As you say, she was found dead in her home by her manager, by the guy who was making the documentary with her. He says,
and it's all on film too, isn't it?
Yeah, and that sort of, I did hear him on an interview after this as well, and he sounded almost proud of the fact that he managed to like film her dead. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just seemed like a really exploitive guy. Like he said he'd grown concerned and went to check on her, but you wouldn't take your camera if you were that concerned. You know, your main thought would be to get in and help the person.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being unfair, but
I don't know. Like, I have to agree. I've seen the trailer for the documentary, and in one hand it looks like a great tribute to a great competitor, to a great, I don't want to say superstar, megastar maybe, but on the other hand it looks very voyeuristic, very exploitive.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know.
Like, well, I think we'll always wonder what was going to come from it. It's never been released. I don't count on it ever seeing the light of day because the manager has, I don't know, he's done even more dodgy stuff since then. He tried to start a GoFundMe to spread Chyna's ashes. They said he owned 25% of them and was getting people to donate so that he could spread them where she supposedly wanted them, and he was selling seats and tickets and t-shirts, and Chyna's mother had to come out and say it was a scam, that she owned all of Chyna, and it was just, I don't know, just dodgy shit that you don't want to happen after you die. It's also kind of sad that nobody from WWE supposedly went to her funeral, apart from Sean Waltman and Rob Van Dam, if you believe.
It's really sad what happened to Chyna. I don't know if that documentary will see the light of day. It sounds really dodgy, to be honest.
Sounds morbid, almost.
Yeah, but, you know, I would rather remember Chyna's career in a positive way. That's what we're doing here today. We're reflecting on such an important career, such an important character, such an important person in wrestling.
All things considered, career-wise, and disregarding anything else that might have happened, focusing on just the wrestling stuff, that she should be 100% surefire Hall of Famer. Oh,
absolutely. As I mentioned there, Chyna shattered glass ceilings and she broke down barriers. You know, and she's such a significant character in wrestling. She should be a Hall of Famer. But what does a Hall of Fame even mean in the WWE world? It's a website. It's
an opportunity to wave at the fans at WrestleMania.
You know, maybe someone might be angry with me for saying this, but I think when someone passes away, I think it's too late. I think they missed the boat, missed the chance.
See, I think the Hall of Fame is important, especially to the wrestlers themselves. You want that recognition, and I totally agree with you. They spend too much time putting people off and saying, "Oh no, we'll not do them this year," or whatever, and they wait too long. And when some of these people die, it's not fair. They should have got their due while they were still alive.
Yeah.
Especially someone like Chyna, who was so young.
Yeah, we've seen this time and time again over the years. Of stars, Vader who's passed away recently. Why was he not in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, Randy Savage.
Yeah, why did they procrastinate and hold off?
Especially when they knew he was sick.
So to wrap up, Patrick, Chyna, a pioneer for women's wrestling. Absolutely. She's the first woman who became equal to the men. She stood toe to toe with the likes of Triple H, Stone Cold, The Rock, The Undertaker, Kane. You name it, she stood across the ring from them. She was perhaps the resident Wonder Woman, as I mentioned earlier. The first woman to appear in the Royal Rumble, first woman to appear in the King of the Ring tournament, first woman to win the prestigious Intercontinental title. Any last thoughts on Chyna?
Yeah, I think hopefully her legacy isn't that she was so deeply affected by Triple H and Stephanie that her life kind of fell apart. I don't really think that it's fair to remember her as the broken person she was towards the end. She didn't have the best matches, but she was an absolutely incredible impact to WWE. Actually, you have to say, a good character more than just a wrestler. She did some great stuff with Eddie Guerrero, great stuff with Mark Henry. Her in-ring career was really only the best part of 2 years, but the accomplishments are all there. That list of firsts is never going to be toppled ever again. No one's going to hit the heights she did. Over the years and through all the heartaches and issues, she might have seemed like attention seeking at times, or various other things, but I think she was just troubled. She had her issues, but she was mostly seemed to be a sweet person deep down, and I just hope that she's remembered for the right reasons and not for all the troubles. That's it for another episode of Legion of Gloom. If you've enjoyed the show, and even if you haven't, give us a like, subscribe to us wherever you can find us. It's at LOG Podcast on Twitter. It's at Legion of Gloom Podcast on Facebook. You can search for us on SoundCloud. You can find us on YouTube. You've done one of those already, so find us on everything else. And stay tuned for the next episode. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
Sammy, baby.